Hi, I'm Danny, and I'm here with Sue from BTM. Sue, tell us a bit about how you got this fantastic project started.
Well, it's a very, very long story, both of you, because I actually started my job nearly 39 years ago. So in 1982, I think it was, I was looking for a job after university. I'd done English. That's back in the days where an honours degree was 4 years, not three. So telling my age the whole time. And I came to Bradford for the interview, and it was a bit of a shock, to say the least. I'd always lived in the country in the middle of nowhere because my dad was a gamekeeper, and before that he was a stockman, so always we lived. I mean, at one time my dad used to take us up to the bus stop for school on a tractor and trailer because we lived 3 fields away. And when he got to the top, the milk would be coming out the top of the milk bottles because it was freezing cold. So yeah. So coming into Bradford, an industrial town, was an
A
education.
slightly strange industrial town as well, even if you've heard of other ones, I think. Yeah.
So when I actually got the job, the woman who was running it at the time, Anne, took me around. It was a place called the Cathedral Centre, which actually was an old cathedral school, and they had some pictures on the wall of children in ragged clothes with no shoes on their feet. So it had been an old church school at one time. But she took me out to look at some of the outreach posts that they had where they were working on different projects. And as we were driving along towards Bolton Woods, I think it was, there was a woman sat on a wall, and I looked and I thought, well, what? I said, why does she keep looking in that plastic bag? I'm like, what's she doing? And she went, no, dear, she's glue sniffing. And she just kept driving. So it was certainly an education, and very much an education for me, because the first team of people I had, with a very small team on what was a youth opportunities project then, was a team of 6 punks. So they had chains and studs and clips and things all over the place, and their hair, the tallest one was about a foot and a bit, so he did it up with egg white and stuff every morning. And I thought, I just towel dry my hair and that's it. I don't know how you can be bothered. But we didn't get on very well to start with, and I couldn't understand. And I think part of my philosophy through life has been about, well, why is that person angry? Is it me? Is there something I'm not doing? Is it something that is unintentional that I've not realized? It must be something in my communication that's not right. So I said to them one day when I got to the end of my tether, I used some rather bad language to match theirs and said, I'm not going anywhere. So, what is it that you don't like about me? You just tell me. And they said, well, you don't know anything. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, you asked us how to turn on that machine. And I said, And I said, but why is that annoying? Can't we learn together? No, because we told them that we wanted somebody, as in the people who'd employed me. They asked us what we wanted, and what we said was we wanted somebody who had technical knowledge, who could help us buy equipment and get started with the talking magazines, which is what it was at the time. So I said, right, well, the bargain we'll have to make is that I'm not going anywhere. So, we can go and do this together. So we went along to the library, and on one of the many occasions, in Bradford then, there was still a CNA, again, telling my age. And as we walked past the window, they were saying to me, Sue, why is everybody staring at us? I went, right, okay, halt, turn, look in the window. What do you see? Fair enough.
Yeah.
And so off we went to the library, and then we used to go to a place called Morley Street Resource Centre, where they used to have a club for people with sight loss. And they used to love it when they could hear us coming for a start, because all the chains were rattling and they were sniffing, and their boots had studs on the bottom and stuff. And they were so lovely with those older people. They sat and listened to their stories. They collected stories on the recording equipment we bought. And so we turned it into something that worked for everybody. And I found that's a good philosophy to have all the time, is to think about, what is it that's not right here? There's always a reason for young people or anybody, old people, being angry, and you have to sort of get behind that bravado and find out what's going on. And that's what's fascinated me with my job all along, is working with people to find out, you know, how can you support them to be their best self? How can you show them there are more options than drug dealing and breaking into houses, which at one stage it got quite tricky in my job, because it was, they saw me as a friend. But of course, you're not, you're their tutor. And they would
Yeah.
say, oh, Sue, we went and did this job the other day.
Yeah.
And the woman was in the house. And I, you know, I used to be horrified. I said, right, you need to stop, because you can't tell me things like, but why, you're our mate. I said, I'm honestly not. I said, I'm here for you, but I can't be your mate, because that's crossing a line. And you know, to cut the end of that story short, two of them still come to see me at the new building we're in.
Oh,
And they
wow.
must be in their 40s, 45, 50 now. One of them's a delivery driver, and the other one works in a bank, I think. But they just pop by occasionally and say, still here, Sue, still here. You don't look a day over 40. You know? And they're really funny. So that was how I got started. We made just one talking magazine, and it was on cassette. That's how long ago it was. And we used to use reel-to-reel tape. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where you have to wind it round, find the mistakes. You've got a little splicing pencil, you know, and you have to chinograph where it is the mistake is, then the other end, cut it out physically with a razor blade, and then join it back together. So that's what we used to do. And we once presented somebody who had done an interview with us with a box of because we did this interview and they went, so what I'm saying is, and we just had all these little bits of tape box, and they thought that was hilarious. So
Danny does something similar with these videos.
Does he?
Yeah, I have to cut a little bit shouting in. Yeah.
But at that stage, the other thing is that if you take a piece out and you've dropped it on the floor and it's the wrong piece, you look down and there's dozens of it.
You've got to try and find it, yeah.
So, but we had a lot of laughs, and they really learned a lot, and they moved on to jobs, and I got new teams of people. But it became more and more restrictive with government legislation, and I just felt that we needed more freedom to develop the young people's skills, and to not have to fill in forms every other day. So we became a charity. So then we formed as Bradford Cassette Talking Magazine. But very soon, because of course I'm trying to fill in 39 years here for you that I've been doing
in a short time, yeah.
So very soon we then looked at doing other magazines. So we had a big South Asian population in Bradford, so we started with Ball Chal, and then Gal Bat, which are both posh ways of saying in conversation. And then we had one called Livewire. So that was done by the young people on the teams, and I had a young woman, Farah, that I worked with, who did the other magazines. But the Livewire magazine, at one stage, it even got so far as having their own soap opera with a little tune to it. And it was addictive. People were, oh, what's happening next? Can you tell us what happens next? And can we keep it? You know, can we keep the cassette? Because they were supposed to send them back. And I said, when we'd finished the whole serial, we would send them, you know, a finished one. And then they got a bit despondent and said, Sue, why are there not many people getting the magazine now? Because it'd gone down to about 300. And I said, well, technology's moving on, you know, different things are happening. They've got schoolwork. So I said, why don't we do a visit to where most of the people are that you work with? So we went to Henshaw's College, which is a place for people with disabilities, primarily those with visual loss. And we were walking down a corridor with one of the teachers, and a couple of the trainees that I worked with were sort of joking and talking to me, and somebody was going towards the classroom and they went, oh, it's Livewire. It's Livewire. And then these other kids came out the classroom. Is that Livewire? Is that the team from Livewire? Is that Joe? Is that Sarah? And they felt like pop stars. So, you know, on the way home, I virtually had to sort of drag them down because they were on cloud nine. And it was that they actually got to communicate with those people that they were sending out stuff to. You know, they sent them the odd letter and things, but they didn't have that face-to-face communication with them, and that made all the difference to them. So then the biggest change that happened for us was when we started to do work for other people. So we knew that information wasn't accessible. So we wanted to move on from talkie magazines, and lots of people said to us, you know, I've got a hospital appointment, or Sue, what does this mean? Can you read it to me? So we thought, well, perhaps we could spread our wings a bit. But to do that, we needed to be in a different place, because we built the little room that we had. So it was no more than 13 by 13. And we put old carpet on the walls with egg boxes and glue. So, you know, that was a laugh, not. And we'd made a little studio space. So I applied for some funding to the Social Enterprise Investment Fund. And it took me about 5 months to write the bid. And I talked to the trainees, what do you think we should put in there? And they turned us down just before Christmas, and I was gutted, because I thought we would really stand a good chance because of what we were saying we were going to be doing. And then about a week before Christmas break, they rang me and said, we'd like you to reapply. And I went, don't think so. You know, it took me forever to write. I've got nothing left. And they went, no, we'd really, really like you to reapply. And so I said, how really? They went, as many as you can think of. So I said, right, okay then. They said, but the bad news is we've got a new form, so you'll have to cut and paste it to a new application form, and you've only got a short space of time to do it in. So I did it over the Christmas break. And on February the 12th, they said to me, the good news is you've got £425,000, but the bad news is you've got to have it all assigned. So it's what's called pro forma invoices by March the 12th. So I had like 4 weeks to find a building and then assign all the things that would need doing to that building. And I happened to know an architect at the time, because we'd been looking at something else, and he said, I know a building, Sue. And that's when he took us to Eldon Place. And it was just, wow, this could be something else. So I managed to do all of that, and as they say, the rest is history. So we moved there about 11 or 12 years ago, and it's amazing how once you have something like a building, that spurs on all your staff as well. We only had 5 at the time, and now we've got 11, and we had about 20 trainees, and now we've got over 70 who come in every week.
Wow.
So once you have money and you have a base, and that's the problem for charities often, that you need to show that you've got a track record for people to take that chance. So we were able to get more lottery money. I got grants from other places, and then we were able to run lots of different projects. But the basis of them all is around our objectives, which is about making information accessible in whatever way that needs to be. So now BTM works with lots of different groups every day of the week. Obviously, this is pre-COVID, we're now working online. But we had people coming in every day, so people with learning disabilities, people with sight loss, people who were deaf, people who are mental health service users, and they were learning how to use equipment. They were learning how to present themselves if they wanted to look for work. They did critiques with each other, and they talked a lot about how they saw their future. And as we developed those projects, we were able to expand the amount of work we were able to do with other people, because we could show, you know, Easy Read is the way to go. And we did Easy Read, which is a particular format, which is pictures on the left and words on the right, but the pictures have to match the words to help illustrate what that is. And we would do that with our work groups and then send it out to other voluntary organisations across the sector. So we tried to be as inclusive as possible, because often, oh yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking of a funny incident. We did this booklet on how to become more confident, I think it was, and they wanted to show being shy. So what they had was a little person figure putting a bag over the head, like to hide. But the bag was sort of brown and a bit frayed around the edge. And when we sent it to another group, they said, Sue, you can't use that picture. I said, why? They said, Nightmare on Elm Street, or it was some sort of horror film out of the time where somebody wore a sack over his head. Of course, I had no idea about that. So we had to change that picture to somebody blushing and doing this. But yeah, so you always need that bit further advice to make sure you're meeting as many people's needs
Feedback,
as
yeah.
possible.
Yeah, not all symbols are universal, I guess.
No, that's right, they're not, and that's why you have to get lots of different people's opinions, and that's how we work. So when it came to lockdown, we were getting prepared for that, and we were telling our groups that they'd have to work from home. And as we were doing that, I hadn't really thought about what machinery they might have at home. I just assumed that everybody had a sort of phone that had a screen you could see. So we were about a week into lockdown, and they were setting up the groups to work on Zoom, and we'd sent out pieces of work to everybody. And a guy called Anthony rang me up, and he said, Sue, I'm not really happy today. I said, oh, why is that, Anthony? He said, well, I'm stood at my window and I can see a few people outside. He said, but I can't go out, can I? I said, well, it'd be better if you didn't, because we're in lockdown and you need to keep yourself safe, because you also need to shield because of your health conditions. But I feel really lonely. I said, well, aren't you joining the Zoom meetings? I don't have a gadget. I said, what do you mean you've got a phone? No, it's an old Nokia phone. And I hadn't realized that. So he said, so they're sending me texts saying, wow, the meeting was great today. Or they're ringing me up and saying, oh, we had great fun at the disco, at this and at that. And he was really upset. So I said, right, Anthony, I promise you, I will try and find a solution to this. So I spoke to a few of the people, and then I rang Sovereign Health, who had helped what was called the Strategic Disability Partnership at the time. So we had a track record with them, and within 2 days, Sovereign Healthcare had given me £2,000. So on the back of that, remember I said earlier about money begetting money, I then spoke, long story short, to quite a few people, and I didn't get an ankle biter award for nothing, because I tend not to give up. I've got that award somewhere. It's not in this room, but it's a little trophy that said Ankle Biter of the Year.
Wow.
And within about 3-4 weeks, I had £40,000. So I then negotiated with a firm. But then, just like I was saying about you need to consult, we wanted to make sure that the gadget that we bought and what was on it was right for everybody. So we started pulling in groups of people to say, you know, if you could have a tablet, what would you want it to do? Because I can't afford iPads because they're too expensive, and we can't afford laptops. So what can we do with tablets? So they started talking to me and say, well, we need Zoom and we need WhatsApp and Microsoft Teams for some organisations, social workers who wanted to keep in touch with their people. And then I said, well, what if everybody doesn't understand it? So then what we did was we pulled together a work plan, and the groups at home worked on, we bought one tablet separately at a famous firm, I think, online. And we took pictures of it so it could say, this is where you turn it on, this does this, this is where the plug is, and then different screens and how to use all the different apps. We refined that till we were sure it was right. And then I worked with other people in the voluntary sector, particularly Sue Neverson, who is the CEO of Cabad. And she found me 12 volunteers within about 3 days. And because we have 3,000 square foot on our top floor, we were able to get those people in to program all the tablets and to then clean them down and rebox them all. So now I needed delivery. So again, Sue came to the rescue and found me an SSE driver, which is an electrical company, and he was amazing. In fact, you know, he was very broad, and he came in one day and he said to me, Sue, if you make me cry one more time, I'm not coming in again. He said, that girl you just sent me to, he said, I had to fend her off with the box because she liked the mummy so much. So it was very emotional to begin with, and I think we hadn't realised the need that we would be filling, and I don't think anybody realised how solitary for some people lockdown would be, and how it would cut them off from so many different things. So we then had a team of people who looked at how can we be fair and equitable. So we got about just under 1,000 tablets, So I needed to think about, right, how could we distribute that in a way that many sections of the community. So again, I worked with Sue in the voluntary sector and social services, and in the end we sent them to people who were in recovery, we sent them to people in residential care, we sent them to people who were shielding, people with learning disabilities, people who were mental health service users. So we tried to include as many people as
You've
possible.
helped a few of the groups we've previously interviewed get them as well, and that's been,
Yes.
but we've heard back from them how fantastic that's been. So yeah, like you said,
And
reconnected them.
that's the point. The stories you hear, as I say, we were in tears at the beginning nearly every day because it was so emotional being cut off ourselves. So we were in the building, but people were passing, you know, one at a time up the stairs. We were being really careful. There were lines on the floor. People had to go one way around. We were just being really careful. But talking about the SSE driver, so the story had been that I'd had a request from somebody who was just outside the Bradford district. And I thought, well, I don't care, so, because her mum was distraught that this girl who was only 9 wasn't able to join in with school projects. She wasn't coping with it very well, because although she had brothers and things, and when they weren't sending in homework, they were working with their dad on the farm. So he went out and delivered this tablet, and she was just beside herself. And her mum rang about 4 or 5 days later and said that she was this different person, that she'd made her a bag to put the tablet in, so she carried it everywhere with her, and she would pat it. You know, even if she was sat watching the TV, she would stroke the bag and know that that was hers, and she could access things at any time she wanted. And I think it was the same with residential care, in that people had been talking to people on the phone, but they weren't able to see their faces. So by giving 1 or 2 tablets to as many care homes as possible, they were able to use those for people to see their relatives. And although that wasn't perfect, it did make a huge difference. And I had some pictures of people reaching out and touching the screen and putting their hand to the person. And they said it really made a difference to that person's mood. And I think the final story around that, or I shall just get over emotional, is I was asked by a social worker that this woman's tablet had broken, and she'd had 2 strokes, even though she was quite young. She was 28, and she had 2 children under 6. And it's an area of Bradford I'd not heard of. So I used my sat nav, and as I got nearer and nearer, it was really difficult to find, and it was a back-to-back. And I thought I'd seen poverty, having seen it myself as a child. I had shoes with newspaper in the bottom, and one time Dad was unemployed. We lived on vegetables in the garden, and you know, I thought I knew what it was, but this was something else. There was rubbish in the streets, there was needles, there was, you know, it was just indescribable. So I went down, and she lived at the back of this back-to-back, and she didn't answer the door, and it's pouring with rain. I thought, well, I'm not going, you know, I'm gonna wait, because I'm sure she's in, because she can't be out anywhere. So eventually she came to the door, and it took me a while to tune into her voice. She said, "Is that for me?" And I said, "Absolutely." And she said, "Do I need to give it back?" I said, "No, absolutely not. It's a gift, you know, it's yours." And she took it from me and hugged it to herself and said, "You know, this will be a life changer. It's a lifesaver. Thank you so much. Thank you so much." And I said, "Look, go in, it's cold." And by this time I'm dripping. But then by the time I got in the car, I was just in floods. You know, my nose is dripping, I'm crying. It was just because it did make a difference. And a social worker around me and said she was now able to see the woman, was able to take her through things she could do to make herself feel better. She was able to see the children, and that connection wasn't possible before that. So I think that whole Keeping Connected project, and we're still going on with it now, I'm applying for further funding, has made a huge difference to people. And what we're talking about now is how can we use that project moving forward? So even when people come out of lockdown, how can we use that digital technology to do different things to keep people connected in a different way? And I think that's what you always need to do. You need to think about what can we do differently? How can we do things differently? And at BTM, we listen very closely to what the people we work with say. We try to do things in a different way. So they work for us in that we can get asked by public health or by the clinical commissioning groups, can you do a booklet on different subjects? You know, could be blood pressure, could be heart conditions, living with dying, a very difficult subject. And then we try to return the favour to them. So we give back by saying, you know, would you like to learn how to do this? Or have you ever tried being behind the camera? Or would you like to do more photography or have your own exhibition? So lots of the students have done that. And we also try to work on things that they want. Somebody called Peter. My office is on the ground floor of our building as you come in the door. And I love being there because I can see people coming and going. Because the bigger you get, the more as a manager you tend to have to pull back from that face to face. When I first started, I was telling you, at a place called the Cathedral Centre, we used to run strawberry teas every summer. So when we were just doing that one talking magazine, I'd bring in 60 people, I'd hire buses and they'd all come for strawberry afternoon tea and we'd have some entertainment and have a band on. And some people, that was the only time they got out. So that was amazing too.
There's a big difference.
But so Peter came to my door and he said, Sue, and I'm typing away. And I said, oh, hi Peter, how are you? And he went, what's dementia? And it's like one of those conversation stoppers. I said, oh, why are you asking? And he said, what is it? I said, well, dementia. And I started to explain to him. I said, why do you need to know? Well, the doctors just told me I've got dementia. I said, well, did he talk to you about what he could do? No, he said, read this leaflet. So, you know, in my head, I've got this doctor's head and I'm doing this with it on the desk. and I said, oh, because I didn't want to upset him. So I said, oh, right. So you've got a leaflet there. He said, yeah, but I can't read it. So I said, yeah, I know. Let's go talk to the group. So we went to talk to the group upstairs and we said to them, what can we do to help you? Did you think, well, we can do an easy read booklet, Sue, and we can do some audio so we can listen to it at the same time as reading it. So that's what we did. So we researched what dementia was, how it comes about. They did a lot of looking into that. And then they got quite upset. And I said, what's wrong? They said, well, if Peter's going to change and he's going to get a bit more worried and forgetful, can we do a book on how to be his friend? So they did a book then on how to be a friend to someone with dementia. And we've reprinted that hundreds of times and it's gone out across the whole district. So that booklet came out of something that they needed. And that happens all the time, that we try to give back. And we always try to think of different ways of doing things. And that's why we now do training on the accessible information standard. So that's a standard that everybody is supposed to comply with who works in health and social care. Came in 2016. I was on a Zoom call last week, and I won't say who with and where because that might give it away, but a senior worker with NHS said to me, sorry, you're talking about the AIS, what is that? It's the Accessible Information Standard. Sorry, I didn't mean to use the acronym. And they said, do you think you could tell me a bit more about that? And I said, but it's your standard. It's your legal standard. You brought it in. Oh, right. So we talk to people about how you can do small things that can make a difference, that how people feel if you don't give them accessible information. And when we started doing the training, when I'm telling them dry stuff at the beginning with Joe, when we could meet in large groups, so we'd be doing 60 people at a time, and we'd try to explain to them what it meant. And you could see them start sort of getting out their phones or looking at the watch thinking, oh, I hope it's all going to be like this. And then I play them a film by somebody called Sue, who had sight when she was younger, but then lost her sight as she got older through glaucoma and another condition. And she tells the story of how not having information she can see and understand for herself means that you have no independence. You have to rely on other people. It makes you feel not part of society, that you can't get involved because you don't know what's going on. And she then she tells on film the story of going for a mammograph. So not that either of you would know about going for a mammograph, but you
I've
often, it's in
experienced
one
it,
of those
yeah.
big
Yeah.
Pantechnicon trucks, and you have to go up some steel steps. So they guided her up the steps. They told her what was going to happen, and she thought that was because she was blind, but actually they do that with everybody because it's quite a dangerous, it's a health and safety issue. So when she came out, they said to her, oh, and here's what happens next, and they put a leaflet towards her hand. And she said, but I can't see that. Now, this is the first mistake, because there's ignorance comes in lots of different forms. So the ignorance here was born out of embarrassment, in that they didn't know what to say. So they said the first thing that came into their head was, well, somebody can read it to you. And she said, in that moment, I just felt totally useless as a person, and that I played it forward and I thought, well, okay, when this mammogram comes back, what if it says I have to go for further investigation, and they send me a letter at home and my husband reads that before me, so I don't make the decision about who I tell. The institution, the organisation has taken that out of my hands. And that's when people start to sit up and take notice. So when they hear that story, it's like there's a switch goes on and they think, ah, right. And then we play other films, people with learning disabilities, about feeling if they get sent a booklet, the frustration is that they just throw it away because they think, why can't people understand what I need and how I need it? And then obviously people who need BSL as well, British Sign Language. It's always
even people with dyslexia. I know it's a huge problem for people. Even people with dyslexia, I know it's a huge problem, the frustration from just having to read all these documents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And people, there is a place for that sort of language, I think, but it's usually in meetings with people who are all on the same level. So they could, it's shorthand for them. So they can talk in acronyms and they can talk about things because there are only people who are knowledgeable. But most of the time you need to change your language to work with the people you're working with. And I think another story I tell to bring that home is something, again, you're always trying to learn lessons for yourself. And I used to work with Temple Bank School, which is no longer there, which is a school for people with visual impairment. I worked with their sixth form. And there was a young guy called Richard joined the class. He was about 13 at the time. He'd been sighted when he was younger and then had walked out between two cars and been hit by a car, and he had two steel plates, or titanium I think they were, in his head. And he was quite difficult to get through to, and I hadn't known him very long, and we were going to Roundhay Park. So for people who don't know, there's a Roundhay Park, which is the parkland and amusements and things. And then there is a place where they have koi carp and other things out in the grounds. And then they have various animals and things to look at. And butterflies is one of the famous things within there. So we went there as a small group of 8 people, and I talked about the koi carp as we were going in and how big they were, and people put their hand on the edge of the water. And then we went inside, and I'm trying to describe, they have an ant farm, or they used to, which is one of the first things you see. So I'm talking, and being an English graduate, I thought, well, I'm doing quite well in my language. It's very colourful and flowery. And other people, some of them seemed to get it and they were giggling, and Richard's face didn't change. It was completely flat. So, as I've said several times through here, I thought, right, there's something I'm not doing right here. How am I not communicating with this person? And I said to him, because he held back, and I said, Richard, is there something I'm not doing here? You know, do you not like ants? Or is it you don't want to be here? Or I can't see what you're saying, Sue. I can't see. I said, right, okay. I said, can I take your arm? So I took his arm and I said, right, okay. So this is the branch. And then I had longer nails at the time. And I said, this is the ant. So I gently put my fingernails into his arm. And then I went, and some of them are doing this. And I took them round and I said, then they're coming back the other way. And his face just started to flicker a little bit. And I said, and some of them have got leaves in their mouth. And I took his finger and I said, they're about this big, but that's bigger than the ant. I said, yes, it is. I said, but leaves are quite light, so they're carrying them. And I said, when they reach another ant, they're just going down underneath to avoid that other ant. And so he said, right, where are we going now? And I was like, wow. Said about 7 words, spit a word. And I said, right, I said, you're going to have to guess this time, Richard. So I said, give me your arm. And I said, right, this is the head. I said, and this is the length of the body. But if you imagine this length, it's swaying underneath. He went, well, that's easy. See, that's a monkey. I said, it is indeed. I said, and Richard, it's putting its tongue out at you. And so he leant towards the cage and he went, and then we did that all the way around. So now I'd found that connection. So it was that touch that he could now imagine in his head. And we did butterflies and we did birds. And the next day the school rang me and they said to me, what did you do to Richard yesterday? I thought, ooh, safeguarding. I'm in real trouble here. You know, I touched that person. I was using his arm. And they went, no, he came back to school and he said to us, guess what I did today? And they went, oh, I don't know, because he didn't speak much at school either. He said, I went to Roundhay Park and I saw fish and I saw ants and I saw a big monkey that was sticking its tongue out and there were lots of butterflies. And from then on, they use that communication method as well, and they talk to him. So to me, that's a key lesson, that you should never give up. There's always a reason for the way people behave. And I shall never forget Richard. He was an amazing young man, and it was just, you could have so easily just thought, oh, you know, he's just that way out, and just walked past him and left it. And then that relationship would never have changed. And I think that's one of the key things I try to share with all the people that I work with. That there's always a way, you know, there's always a reason.
Yeah,
and I think that's what we work with, the people we work with. We always try to accommodate things that they would like, the dreams that they have. The big conversation is something that we've started, which is about how you can gain more independence, look after yourself better, how you can take more control of your life. Because not everybody, but some people with a learning disability live quite sheltered lives, and the sort of things they can do under their social care package can be quite limited. And this is social workers who initiated this with us and said, we want to be able to offer people more. So we started conversations about, you know, how can we show people what it could be like. So we worked with a small little group of people with learning disabilities and said to them, how can we show this to people? How can we do the story? She said, oh, well, we'll do a play, Sue. Should we do a play? So, of course, we have to take it way over the top. So the social worker actor person was one of my staff, and she put glasses on the end of her nose and she had a clipboard. And the person with learning disabilities was saying to her, but I want to go and do work with horses. Oh, I don't think that's a very good idea, do you? You know, you are getting on a bit and you had that hip operation. You know, I know of a nice little class where you can go and do painting, or there's even a reading group. Should we do a reading group? And you can see people starting to think, and you can see them shuffling around thinking, well, that's not right. So once, and right at the end, because she keeps offering him all these different classes, and in the end, he loses his temper and he says to her, I don't want to ride a bloody horse. I want to go work with them and clean them out. I want to stroke them. I don't want to get on one. And so and then she just looks at the and she says, why didn't you say? And so everybody falls about laughing. But that sparks that discussion. So people started to talk about who should have had the control there. How do you get across without getting cross what you mean? And then the other play was a mum, an overprotective mum, which is a bit more of a delicate subject. He wanted to go swimming, and she she said to him, oh, you know, we went on holiday last year, your brother had to rescue you, you know, you got stuck. Yeah, but there'll be an instructor there, Mum. Well, what if he's looking the other way? And then the ultimate penalty is always, how would I feel? Just think, your poor mum, you know, and it's all that bribery stuff. So then they started about how could they take self-control? How could they run sessions for themselves? And we're just starting to think about day opportunities that can be run by people with disabilities for themselves. So they will run them, they will organise how it gets paid for. I mean, I have a group who started quite small, but they pooled some money they had and decided how far could they get on a bus. So they looked at the routes, and aptly enough, it's the 747 because it goes past the airport in Eden.
Oh, yeah.
So, but that route goes all the way around the little villages towards Harrogate. So by the end of their trips, just before lockdown, they were actually taking a flask and a little box of sandwiches, and the driver knew them and he'd go, hey, oh, here you are again. And so they wouldn't get off the bus. They'd do the whole route and back again, just to see the countryside changing and get to talk to each other. And it's that sort of thing. It doesn't have to be something structured. That gave them a feeling of well-being and control. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's important in everything that we do. And have I wittered on too much now?
No, that's fantastic.
This has been great,
yeah, I think
I can
really,
go on and on, you know.
Yeah, but that's great. No, you're doing great information. I think great ethos. Don't leave people behind.
Yeah, and
talk to people, communicate in a way they can understand.
Yeah, the other lesson I've learned from you is that things aren't universal. Figure out what each individual person needs.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. That no two people are alike, and something that may come across as being angry and resentful is in fact something else entirely. You know, everybody has a life. And everybody has other things that affect their life. And it could be something that's nothing to do with you, or it could be you. You know, you never know till you try and communicate.
And if it is us ourselves, that's almost good, because then we can change ourselves, and the problem it's quite easy to fix if we can just adjust something we're doing. Yeah. No,
I think you both have to be willing to grow and adjust and not be stuck where you are, and realize that somebody else could have a better viewpoint than you. You've just never seen it that way before.
Yeah,
that's fantastic information. You're doing fantastic work.
Some great words of wisdom.
Pandemic. Yeah, with all this information. Thanks so much for speaking to us, sir.
Yeah, no problem at all.